But first, the big story of the week. You know what happened. A Democrat prosecutor, elected by the people of Manhattan on a Get Trump platform, took America's 2.5-century-old reputation as the world's leading exponent of the principle equal justice under law. A saying so powerful and so important that is it engraved on the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C., and they took that and chucked it in the bin, in the process making America look like the sort of country where generalissimos use the legal system to harass and neutralize their opponents. Now, I don't care if you love Donald Trump or hate him, but the idea that charges half a dozen years old over bookkeeping misdemeanors relating to attempts to keep an affair quiet have been miraculously resurrected, despite the statute of limitations, with the just wonderfully coincidental timing that means a trial on these charges could happen just as the Republican primary season is kicking off, and using what legal experts across the spectrum are calling a novel legal theory to attach these misdemeanors to campaign finance laws and magically turning them into lowest order felonies? Well, I'm sorry. That's not justice. It's vengeance. And it smacks of, no, sorry, it doesn't just smack, it is an absolute nuclear-powered jackhammer of a double standard. It calls to mind the famous saying of Lavrenti Beria, Joseph Stalin's chief henchman, "Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime." And hell, even some of Donald Trump's biggest enemies admit that as charges go, these are pretty overcooked.
In terms of a case that's being brought against a former president, it's a little underwhelming.
And here's Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, who later became one of Trump's biggest haters.
Well, speaking as someone who very strongly does not want Donald Trump to get the Republican presidential nomination, I'm extraordinarily distressed by this document. I think this is even weaker than I feared it would be. And I think it's easily subject to being dismissed or a quick acquittal for Trump.
And here's a former Deputy Attorney General on MSNBC.
If we come out of the box in my second week here, charge him with relatively with relatively insignificant crimes from before he was president, talk about the department being subject to being pilloried on being political.
Trivial and insignificant, but none of that matters because remember, this isn't just about damaging Trump's chances for 2024. If that was really the Democrats' game, they'd leave him alone and not engage because, of course, it is the fight that Trump craves. No, what is happening here is punishment. Punishment to Donald Trump for blowing up the political system in 2016 and crueling the dreams of Democrats who wanted to follow 8 years of Obama with 8 years of Hillary. Ah, yes. Remember how well they took it? Trump's 2017 inauguration practically provoked, dare I say, an insurrection, not just in the streets, but in Congress and the halls of power. And that's where the double standard comes in. If you want proof that this is not really about no one is above the law or whatever fatuous nonsense that prosecutor and his fans in New York have claimed, look at this. Just over a year ago, the Guardian newspaper, you know, that notoriously alt-right MAGA publication, reported on a fine paid by Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. Have a listen to what they wrote on March 31st, 2022. Quote, Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and the Democrat National Committee have agreed to pay $113,000 to settle a Federal Election Commission investigation into whether they violated campaign finance law by misreporting spending on research that eventually became the infamous Steele dossier. Guardian continues, That is according to documents sent on Tuesday to the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation, which had filed an administrative complaint in 2018 accusing the Democrats of misreporting payments made to a law firm during the 2016 campaign to obscure the spending, unquote. So let's go through that again. They misreported money that they said was used to pay a law firm, but was instead channeled to influence an election. Precisely what Donald Trump is alleged to have done, trying to hush up stories about an affair he allegedly had with a porn star. Because, you know, Donald Trump always had such a reputation as a model of marital fidelity. Anyway, while Trump's attempt to hush up his affair with Stormy Daniels may have caused some domestic discord, what the Clinton campaign's funneling of money to buy the entirely bogus Steele dossier unleashed was far, far worse, alleging essentially that Trump conspired with Russia to steal the 2016 election and that the Russians also had really gross compromising information on him. Information that, let's just say, for anyone who knows about Trump's germophobia would have been almost impossible to believe. Well, that kicked off all sorts of mayhem. It allowed the Democrats to run around screaming, "Russia, Russia, Russia!" to excuse Hillary Clinton's obtusely awful campaign that included calling half the country deplorables. It kicked off an impeachment saga that ultimately found Trump had no case to answer, and it revealed just how compromised many of America's law enforcement and intelligence agencies turned out to be by politics, and how easily American citizens' rights could be compromised by secret courts that authorize spying on people like Carter Page. And much, much more. Yet, was anyone indicted for that? Of course not. Double standard. It's divisive and damaging as hell and gives America's rivals and enemies, countries like China and Russia, the opportunity to say, well, how can you talk about us when this is how you run your justice system? Now, Joe Biden, of course, could do a lot of good here by saying the charges are out of line and that this circus is unbecoming America. But so far, he hasn't really had much to say on the subject.
Thanks, guys. Let's go. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Let's go. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go, guys. Thank you.
Keep laughing, Mr. President. It's fiddling while Rome burns.